Welcome, everyone. What an exciting day this is. Today, we're taking another step forward towards opening more doors for individuals in our community. I think you're all well aware of the challenges our community faces, so I want to instead focus on an opportunity for immediate impact. My name is Shkelqim Kelmendi. I'm the Executive Director of Housing Connector. Launched in 2019, Housing Connector partners directly with property owners and managers throughout King County to lower barriers and increase access to housing for individuals in our community. We believe that when a unit sits vacant, it is not only a loss for the property, it is also a loss for our community. And there lies our opportunity for a solution. Our strategy is to center the needs of property owners and managers and provide them with free referrals to fill their units, as well as the financial safety net, and in exchange, have them lower the screening criteria and the barriers to give more individuals access to homes. But when those residents move in, we don't stop there. We support those properties for up to 2 years to ensure that any challenges that come up, they have a partner to maintain the stability of those residents. You know, we also work with over 40 service providers here in the community to allow case managers to have easy access to units for their clients so they can spend more time doing what they do best, which is supporting their clients. So what results are win-win outcomes that sees units getting filled and people getting housed. I'm proud to say that in the last 6 months alone, we have partnered with over 100 community partners and property partners to connect 460 individuals to homes. And something that's important to me, 70% of those individuals are individuals of color. You know, these numbers are impactful. And Housing Connector has shown that this strategy works and that property owners want to be a part of the solution in our community. However, when we launched this organization, we knew that the scale of the problem demanded a solution to match it, which brings us to today. I am proud to announce the launch of a new platform designed in partnership with and housed by Zillow that will allow us to scale our impact and streamline how case managers access units. Moving forward, case managers will have access to units with reduced screening criteria right at their fingertips, being able to house more individuals quicker than ever before. Now, others are going to talk a little bit more about the tool and the partnerships that made this possible, but I want to quickly just thank Zillow. They have spent so much time and thoughtful energy to design this platform. Specifically, I want to thank Taylor, Stephen, and Sam for all of their efforts. In addition, I want to thank my team, the Housing Connector team, Angela, Juanita, and Yulia, for all you do to make this possible, and also the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber. From day one, the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber stepped up to incubate Housing Connector and gave us that opportunity to focus on our mission and strategy instead of the overhead of starting a new organization. Look, I believe that our community is only going to solve our housing and affordability crisis with a joint cohesive effort. Today is an example of what can happen when the private, the public, and the nonprofit sector comes together behind a unified vision. Together, we are going to move our community forward faster and further than ever before. And this is just the start. So now, the work that we do is not possible with some of our partners, specifically our partners of the city and the county, who not only provide resources and funding, but they also provide the expertise. And so it is my pleasure to now introduce Mayor Jenny Durkan.
Thank you so much, and if I were smart, I would just say what he said. But I guess I'm not that smart. Thank you so much for your work, for bringing people together. Thanks to the folks in this room. This took so many people coming together to see how we could leverage all the energies and efforts in community, in the private sector, across governments, and this is really amazing. I just want to repeat what he said. 460 people connected with housing. That's 460 families and their families and their families. We know that when people don't have housing, the trauma of that and the reality of that affects so many people and ripples out from each person. To be able to do that at that scale, and we're just getting started. I really look forward to the thousands of families that can be served by these efforts. I too want to thank Zillow for all the great work and partnering with us to make this happen. When I first launched the Innovation Advisory Council in 2018, it started a new chapter in cooperation between our governments and private sector and community-based organizations. And I think few stepped up more than Zillow, but also the Housing Connector and folks at the Chamber and others and at the county to make sure that we worked in a partnership to really make advances on this ever-increasing problem across our region. You know, Seattle has always been that city that invents the future. Anyone who knows me knows I believe in my bones that it is one of the greatest cities anywhere, and we have great challenges. But today is one of those times when we can say the people here are greater than the challenges we face. I knew that by working together that we could really find some incredible ways to make our city an example for other cities on what the future can look like when we merge these things together. Private partners, public partners, community-based partners, and harnessing the power of technology to really help people in their lives. The launch of Zillow's new search tool for the Housing Connector is a really another important step in us trying to help solve our region's problem on homelessness and housing instability. It's the moral challenge of our time. You have heard me say that before, and I will say it again. We know this is the challenge of our time. For our leaders, it has far too long been a fragmented system of trying to address the issues of housing instability and homelessness. I have to thank Constantine for not just his partnership, but his vision to make sure that when we tackle these problems, we're doing it on a systemic basis, a holistic basis, and a regional basis. So I want to thank you, Dow, for all you've done and for everyone at the county who's helped us on this. We established the Regional Homeless Authority. It will also be a new chapter in our region's ability to harness all people together to really solve this problem. Again, I want to thank Zillow for their partnership. I want to thank my own Office of Housing for all the work they've done on this, for all the other city departments who've come together to say, how do we make sure that we're one city handling one big challenge in our things? It's only through these strong partnerships that a successful program can be made, and I think this is an example today. Again, Racquel, thank you for chairing, I think co-chairing the Innovation Advisory Council, and for your whole Zillow team. And I will tell you, each one of the groups has rolled up their sleeves in ways to say, how do we harness our technology, but better? The most valuable thing that those companies bring to our area is the talent they have and the ideas and the energy. So thank you so much for that. The hundreds of hours you put into this will pay off for hundreds, if not thousands, of families. We also would not be here today without other partnerships. I want to thank Markham, where'd you go? There you are, for the Seattle Chamber to really stand up and say we want to be part of the solution here and make sure that we support and incubate this. This is just a start, and I think it's really inspiring because I think it's yet again a way. This can be replicated in other cities. There is no city in America, large or small, that is not facing this challenge. When I talk to other mayors, I don't care if they're a city as large as Los Angeles or a smaller city in the heartlands. They're all talking about how do we make sure that as housing increases in price, that we're keeping people housed. This will be a tool that can be replicated, and I think that that itself is another big thing of this. Finally, I want to thank my Office of Housing and Human Services again for all they do to recognize the needs at this time of challenge. It is really, for us, a humanitarian crisis in many ways, and people every day show up to work thinking, how do they improve the lives of the people in Seattle, the people who are living at the margins and the most underserved. So I want to thank them, thank again all the members of my Innovation Advisory Council, and I now will have the pleasure of introducing Constantine, who is the King County Executive, who has been such a great partner to the City of Seattle in this and so many other ventures. Thank you, Dow.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Durkan. I'm so pleased to be here today. It's an exciting moment for us. Today's event's about recognizing what we can accomplish when we leverage the region's innovative and entrepreneurial spirit to tackle our toughest challenges. We know there's a housing shortage, for sure, But it's not just because we haven't built enough housing. Certainly it is because of that. But there's more to the story. It's also because there are vacant, affordable housing units that aren't filling fast enough. They're here in the city of Seattle. They're throughout the region, from Shoreline to Kenmore to Bothell, from Renton to Kent to Auburn and Federal Way. This region is continuing to build housing, and we need to make sure that every one of those units is available and rented up, and that we are doing the most with the housing stock that's being built. That's why Housing Connector is so important. It makes it easy for private owners and landlords to rent units to qualified tenants. It also provides service and the support landlords need to be able to rent with confidence. But it's not always easy for renters to find those available units, or for case managers to know when a unit may have come available. That's where Zillow and its technology comes in. Zillow understands where the real estate is, where the housing is, and where the vacant properties are. They build tools that property managers and landlords and building owners know and use regularly. And they are setting an example for others by stepping up as a corporate citizen to let everyone benefit from their technology. You know, I, in my younger days, managed apartment buildings myself.
Do you have to say younger?
Yes, much, much younger. And I remember it was a very analog process, and there was a lot involved in getting the applications and checking the references, and we also had Section 8 vouchers, and it was tremendously complicated. Some things we all gripe about the burdens that we have with technology, but some things are made much, much better and more equitable through technology. And I want to thank Zillow for taking the technology that they built for commercial purposes and bringing it to bear on the challenges we have here in our community. It showcases what happens when the private sector unites and partners with nonprofits to help get people into housing quickly and efficiently. The innovative spirit of the Pacific Northwest is helping our community, and it will continue to help our community to meet its greatest challenges. So the mayor and I are now pleased to introduce to you, representing Zillow, their Director of Public Affairs, Racquel Russell.
Hi, everyone. One of our core values at Zillow is that the consumer is our North Star. And for us, that means not just the consumers using our platform, but all consumers. We believe that everyone deserves to have a home and to have the stability and safety that comes with it. For us here at Zillow, doing our part to make that a reality for everyone is part of our culture and our DNA, and has been since day one. This is especially true here in our hometown. This is where we're headquartered. It's where we call home, and as part of this community, we see the challenges facing our region every day. And if we can have a positive impact on these issues facing us, from housing affordability to homelessness, we have a responsibility to act. So when Mayor Durkan called to ask us to join her Innovation Advisory Council, that was an easy choice for us to get involved. Through our membership in the council, this project in particular made perfect sense for us, leveraging our home search capabilities and technology to build and partner with an organization like Housing Connector, whose mission is to help people in need of housing find a home by connecting them with local property owners. It was a win-win. So after months of work by a very dedicated team at Zillow and over 2,500 hours of product work, we're very excited to launch the affordable housing search tool for Housing Connector on Zillow's platform. Working with Housing Connector, we've built a simple, powerful, efficient tool that will make it easier for property owners to upload vacant units and for case managers to quickly search and find those units and see if the unit and screening criteria are a good match for their clients. We hope this is a first step and that we will be able to improve and refine the tool over time based on feedback from its users and from regular updates and improvements that we make to the Zillow platform. And hopefully, this will be something that we can replicate in other communities that could benefit from a tool like this. I mentioned the 2,500 hours of product work completed by Zillow employees. I would be remiss to leave this stage without giving thanks to two of my Zillow colleagues in particular, Taylor DeRosa and Stephen Kwan. Taylor and Stephen led the charge on this important product work, so thank you both. I also want to give a special thank you to Executive Constantine and Mayor Durkan for their tireless leadership when it comes to housing affordability and their investment in Housing Connector. We feel this is only the early days of the impact we can have. We know that Housing Connector and the tool we built for them will only get better with more property owners who participate. And we hope that what we did on this project, using technology to make it easier for property owners and nonprofits to work together, will encourage more to join with Housing Connector. So we can make sure we help get people, everyone who needs a home, into one. Thank you.
Thank you, Racquel. Now, whenever you're starting something new, you need those early believers to take a step and really take a chance on you. And for us at Housing Connector, one of our earliest partners was Security Properties Residential. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Tali Reiner from Security Properties Residential.
Thank you. It's my privilege to be here today. As Shkelqim said, my name is Tali Reiner, and I'm the Vice President of Security Properties Residential. I've also had the opportunity to serve as a board member for Housing Connector. Security Properties is a private real estate investment firm located here in Seattle. We own and operate 12,000 units in the Pacific Northwest, nearly half of which are here in King County. Last spring, when Shkelqim came to my office and shared with me his vision of Housing Connector, I immediately knew that it connected exactly with our goals as an organization at Security Properties. And that's why our property was one of our properties, Hana Place, was one of the first properties to join. Hana Place is located in downtown Seattle. It is a 100% MFTE property. And I'm excited to hear from one of our residents shortly. And so through thoughtful management and meaningful community engagement, Housing Connector bridges the gap between private owners and local nonprofits to house people. In order to accomplish this goal, apartment availability needs to be matched in real time with individuals and families in need. I am extremely excited to be here today among this group of people who had this vision, who knew the importance, who recognized the housing crisis that we had, and decided to take action. I am so excited to be part of this group and to see where it is going to go. I know that as a property owner, I have been using Zillow for many years. And so it just seemed natural to me when they said that they were going to be partnering, that they would take that next step and provide a platform that makes it so easy for property owners like myself to be able to partner with a group like this. We can make a difference. And it's not every day that housing owners like myself are in the news for things like making a difference in a positive way for people who are experiencing homelessness. With Housing Connector, we are not revolutionizing the housing industry. We are instead adding efficiency and coordination where it did not previously exist. Ultimately, this has resulted in higher occupancy for Security Properties and a reduction in the number of households searching for a home in this great city. I encourage my colleagues throughout the industry to join us in partnering with Housing Connector. You will not regret it. I promise. It is a wonderful organization to be part of. I would not be here today telling you this from the bottom of my heart if I didn't see it for myself. The mayor, Executive Constantine, they have done wonders to make this happen, and I am extremely grateful for that. Thank you so much again for letting me be here, and I am so excited to see where we go in the future of this partnership.
Thank you, Tali. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce one of our service provider partners who really, they're the ones that do this work day in and day out to get individuals into homes and support them. Please welcome Walter Washington.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I work for Wellspring Family Services. Over the last 2 years, we've housed over 500 individuals. We know what it's like from a service perspective to hear no, or to know that resources are not available for people who deserve it. What is that like for a case manager or a housing navigator when you have, let's say, 50 individuals you're working with in a year, and you know they're all going to hear a version of no for a variety of different reasons? A screening criteria, a tidbit here and there. It's almost like sometimes they'll find ways to say no or to not call you back. That is a huge albatross for all these case managers. We're talking about 300 and 400 across the greater Northwest in working with families. In comes Housing Connector. Not only can we say yes to those who deserve housing, we can show them in real time what they qualify for and where, and that there is resources available for you. It's a game changer. It saves money, it saves time, it makes us able to focus on the supportive needs that we all deserve to have. Connectivity, right? A network of love, how to find childcare, transportation, all those other things that we kind of take for granted. So we're super excited to see this partnership with Zillow. I'm actually currently looking for more space for my 2-year-old. She thinks she deserves to have her own suite, which includes my room. So I'm using a fantastic interface that Zillow's providing, and my case managers get to use the exact same interface with even more nuance that I'm using to work with families who deserve housing. So I just want to say kudos and hats off to that partnership and watching that grow, and for your interest in helping what I think is the local issue of my lifetime, to making sure that we have not just housing, but healthy households. So thank you for your partnership, and looking forward to watching it grow.
Thank you, Walter. And now it is my pleasure to introduce CHAUNCEY Williamson.
Hello. Good morning. My name is CHAUNCEY Williamson. Glad to be here today. Thankful. For 2 years, I spent on the streets homeless. I didn't have anywhere to go, shelter to shelter, couch to couch. And I was using or trying to use the Section 8 voucher that I had. And I kept getting denied over 20 times at least. I applied to places and they wouldn't let me in because of the screening criteria. October of 2019 came, and I got a phone call from my case manager, Janae, at Catholic Community Services, and she told me that she had a connection through the Housing Connector, and she wanted me to apply at this place called Hannah. And I said, oh, I don't know. I'm about ready to give up. I don't think I'm going to get into it. It's been a long time, and I haven't gotten to a place yet. My credit history was poor. I had all kind of stuff on it. But 2 weeks later, we got a phone call saying that I was approved at Hannah, and it was just like something out of this world. I couldn't believe it. I was so ecstatic and elated to finally be off the streets and to lay my head down in my own place. So I'm very grateful and thankful for the Housing Connector and Catholic Community Services and the City of Seattle for putting forth this great need that many people need in the City of Seattle. So I just want to say thank you, and thank you all for being here.
All right.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing that. At this point, I want to turn it over for a Q&A, but first, again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for believing in this vision. And this is really an example of what we can do when we all work together. So at this point, I will turn it over to any questions for anyone here.
Can you give us, for folks who might not know, a brief explanation of how Housing Connector itself works?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So Housing Connector is a business-to-business organization. Really, we work directly with property owners and managers, and then the case managers and the service providers. When we designed this solution, we realized that property managers cared about three main things, really. They wanted to make sure that rent was paid, that their unit was taken care of, and that they had good neighbors and community. And so we designed solutions to address every one of those needs. We guarantee rent, we provide risk mitigation if the unit's ever damaged, and then we ensure that every resident that moves in has 1 year of case management. On the other side of the equation, we make all of the units that we're able to generate accessible to our case managers and service providers so that they can access them for their clients in real time. so that they no longer have to negotiate each time for a unit, and that when they send an application, they're guaranteed to be accepted because not only have they seen the preferences of the unit, they also know exactly the barriers that they're waiving.
So for people like Chauncey, then it helps lower those barriers, right?
Absolutely. With every single one of our partners to date, every single property has completely waived credit score. Almost, I would say every single one except at least one eviction and past debt. And again, these are all barriers that are keeping individuals from housing that they shouldn't be. We don't believe that your credit score defines your character. And it is not something that specific number should keep you from accessing a home. And I will say again, I've been blown away by all of the properties and the owners in this community who have stepped up and they've lowered or completely eliminated these barriers and have given homes to over 450 people. Like, that is incredible. So yeah, it's the main criteria are credit score, evictions, and past debt that we're working to reduce.
I guess I would address this to the mayor and executive. So I'm a real estate developer. In fact, we manage this building, Cornell and Associates. Thanks for having us. So I was introduced to the program more in detail yesterday and here today to hear all of this. And it's very, excuse me, encouraging to have the public sector and private sector work together. Too little of that. So my question really is, as a real estate developer, real estate owner and manager, the excessive regulation getting passed down by the city council is making it more difficult, housing more expensive, and eventually there will be less people willing to invest private capital into the process of taking the risk to provide housing. So I just want to make that point and also ask the question, is there any relief in sight? Because it's just unbearable, honestly. And again, I want to keep it on a positive note, but I just want people to know and ask that question.
So I'm glad you asked that question. I'll answer it in a couple of ways. First is I want to thank Housing Connector because I think it shows, I mean, if you hear the story, there is such amount of despair and fatigue that comes from somebody having to put in 20 applications. And finding housing has become this, if you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, and case managers literally would have short lists of property managers that had helped them before, and they pick up the phone and just dial. It's 2020, folks, and we're in Seattle. And to be able to harness the technology and then harness those places so that there's a one-stop shop, it's going to help so many people. It only works if we have people like Equity Development that are saying, we're in, it's helped us, it's helped you. And I will say this is that since becoming mayor, we have done a number of things, many of them in partnership with City Council, many across governments, to say, how do we make it more efficient for businesses to provide housing in our city? And I make no mistake about it, we've had a lot of great successes that do not get the same level of attention sometimes as the division does. But for example, we were able to announce in the 3 years that I've been mayor, we have given 3 rounds of funding for affordable housing, bringing together our partners and developers as well as the tax credits we can get from the federal government. I've announced over $1.5 billion in low-income housing. I'm going to say that number again, $1.5 billion. That only comes with great partnerships at the table. I just got a report back from my Middle Income Housing Advisory Board, which is together was advocates, businesses, developers, to say what can government do to be more efficient. And they gave us a suite of recommendations that they think we can do to lower the regulatory barriers so that we can get more affordable housing, both speed it up and make permitting. When I left here today, we were having the first meeting of the permitting group that is saying, okay, by X date, you're going to bring me a whole suite of recommendations how we speed up the development of housing. And so we will continue to work with the private sector, the public sector, across governments to make sure that government isn't one of those obstacles to getting people housed.
Do I have that?
I think you did very well there. When I took office, permitting was maybe the single biggest gripe that I heard from people. And we set about in the county to reduce the time it took to get a permit, to make the permits fixed fee rather than sort of open-ended charges. And we've largely succeeded in that. We have very little urban land left in the unincorporated county, though. Most of that has been taken into cities now. So our role is to work with the cities to make sure we're dealing with some of the regional challenges. For example, the Board of Health has been working to see if we can reduce the cost for a sewer hookup for a new affordable unit like an accessory dwelling unit, for example. Why should a small accessory unit be paying the same thing for a sewer hookup as a 5-bedroom, 3-bath house? For example, we are working to make sure that we have more uniformity in the building codes across cities so that we are not having builders have to understand 40 different sets of regulations. It is an interesting position to be in because we have more opportunity to convene people than we have actual authority. But working with the city of Seattle and our other 38 cities, I think that we will be, and with the private sector, I think that we'll be able to make progress because people are united around the idea that we have to make it easier and more affordable to build housing to take care of the challenge that we have before us.
Mayor, since we're talking about housing, can you address the winter evictions, whether you're going to sign it or not, and maybe a little bit about the Amazon tax with the city and the state?
So on the winter evictions, as you know, a number of amendments were proposed and adopted by the City Council. I've yet to be briefed on what those and the impacts are and meet with the city attorney. So I need to get briefing to determine what's going to happen on that front. With the bill that's pending in Olympia, I've stated it publicly that I support that bill. I'm looking forward to how it moves forward. We have a unique moment in time. A coalition of businesses, labor, advocates, stakeholders have come together and say, we have a significant problem in our region with housing and homelessness. And businesses are saying, we are willing to be taxed to help solve that problem. But we know that these problems do not stop at any city border. We have got to do it as a region. And so I'm looking forward to the next steps as it moves forward through Olympia. Anyone who's been down there knows the bill that's introduced is rarely the one that passes. And we will be very much looking out to make sure that we can get revenues at a scale that help solve that problem. And that also gives the city the ability to continue using some of the tools that we're using today. So I think it's very much in play. I'll say this, I said it yesterday, I do not think that I don't know what Councilmember Sawant is proposing because she's been very short on facts. I look forward to seeing I met with her last week and said I would look at any proposal she had, but simply throwing out a number of $300 million for the city of Seattle alone, that's a factor of like 10 times what the failed head tax was. That's not going to get a single person housed. I don't want to pay for lawyers. I don't want to pay for fights. I want to pay for housing, and I want to get people housed.
Last question.
Do you think the housing addendum of saying, okay, if the House and legislature passes this, that the cities can't pass it, you think that needs to be tagged on?
I think there's a whole range of options that are being discussed right now, and I'm looking for basically 3 things. If there's some language proposed, I want to see what it says and what it does, and I want to make sure that it continues to have cities have the tools they need. Mm-hmm. But right now, in the region, the county has zero ability to raise those revenues. We're looking at perhaps as much as $125 million that we can start putting towards this problem next year. For me, that is the only thing I've seen that is real. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
I do appreciate the businesses coming forward and saying that they want to participate in solving this problem. And one would think that if people went to Olympia and said, please tax us to solve this problem, it wouldn't be that difficult to sell. But of course, you have people, if I can break it down in these terms, on the right and left, nattering away about it. Mayor Durkan's right. This is a regional problem. It needs a regional solution. It's very important to have a solution that is not going to be overturned in court or overturned at the ballot box, but rather that one that is supported broadly by business and labor and the community, so that we can move forward on solving the housing and homeless problem instead of continuing to argue about it.
If they add that addendum, the businesses aren't going to agree with it.
So everything's very fluid in Olympia right now, but there is a concern by some that cities will be able to raise too much in addition to this. There's concern by some that cities will be able to do too little in addition to this. I think those conversations need to happen calmly and coolly with an eye toward the fact that we really do have a collective challenge we have to take on here. And you're right, $125 million regionally every year is nothing to turn up your nose at. We're looking at a bit of a gift horse situation here. And there's an awful lot of people staring that gift horse in the mouth right now, and I think we need to get on with solving the problems.
Can we do the last question now?
So, Racquel, I know from your vantage point of being Vice President of Government and Community Relations at Zillow that you see a lot of ways that tech companies are trying to tangentially help with social issues they care about. And I really love how Zillow has really looked at our core competencies. Do you have any parting words of advice for other tech companies about how they might leverage really what they do best in order to get a huge mass of employees involved in solving the problems they care about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, we've talked a lot today about the partnership that we've had with Housing Connector and the amazing partnership we've had with Shkelqim and his team. When we joined the Innovation Advisory Council, there were a lot of issues on the table for the Mayor's Council. But as a company that focuses on housing, that has this amazing search tool, housing search tool that most people have used, hundreds of millions of people use monthly, it made complete sense for us to use what we know and what we do best to help give back to our community. And I think that's the best way that tech companies and companies in general and the private sector can give back, is finding what you do well and then partnering with our friends in the public sector and the social sector to give back and using those skills that you have in that way.